Don't speak to that old woman. She's just the help. My daughter-in-law's sharp words cut through the hotel lobby, and my son chuckled like it was a joke. Guests nearby turned their heads, stunned by her audacity. She had no idea the old woman she dismissed was the very person who owned the resort she was standing in. I let the silence hang for a moment, watching her smug expression. Then I stepped closer to the receptionist, who looked like she wanted to disappear behind the desk. "It's all right, dear," I said softly, but my eyes never left Amber. My calmness only seemed to make her angrier. "We don't need her meddling," Amber snapped, waving me off like I was a stray dog. "Handle this properly, or I'll make sure you regret it." I noticed Sarah, the receptionist, stiffen. She'd been working for me for years and knew exactly who I was, but with a quick glance I warned her to stay quiet. I wanted to see how far Amber would go before I pulled the ground out from under her. "You wanted the penthouse?" I asked Amber, my voice steady. "Obviously," she sneered. "Do you even know how much money we spend at places like this? We don't settle for leftovers." Mark shifted uncomfortably beside her but said nothing. That was the part that stung the most, watching the boy I raised stand there, letting his wife humiliate me. Finally, I smiled. "You're right. You shouldn't have to settle." I turned to Sarah. "Cancel the deluxe suite. Move the Montgomerys into the penthouse immediately. On the house." Amber's face lit up with triumph, but before she could gloat, I continued, my tone sharpening. "And make sure the staff knows who they're serving. This is my son and his wife. They are here as my guests." The color drained from Amber's face. Her jaw slackened, and for the first time since we'd arrived, she had nothing to say. Mark swallowed hard, his eyes darting between me and his wife, realizing just how much he had underestimated me. I leaned in, close enough for Amber to hear the steel in my voice. "Remember this. Respect isn't bought with designer sunglasses or demanded with shouting. You either give it, or you lose everything around you." Amber's hands trembled as she adjusted her purse strap. For once, the power she clung to slipped from her grip. The resort was mine. But at that moment, so was the truth she could no longer run from. "Don't you dare open your mouth," Amber shouted, her voice cutting through the lobby like glass against stone. "Sarah, or whatever your name is, ignore anything this old woman says. She's nobody, just the help we dragged along." The chatter in the lobby died instantly. Every conversation stopped. Every pair of eyes turned toward us. My cheeks burned. I felt the sting of humiliation in a way I never had before, but Amber wasn't finished. "Don't speak to her," she screamed again, jabbing her manicured finger in my direction. "She's just the servant, the nanny. Don't waste your time on her." I stood frozen. My throat was dry, my heart pounding so violently I thought it might give out. 72 years on this earth, and no one had ever dared spit such venom at me. Not like this, not in front of strangers. Then came the deeper wound. Mark, my son, my own flesh and blood, threw his head back and laughed. Not nervously, not to break the tension, but with genuine delight. Tears gathered in his eyes from how hard he laughed. "Oh God, Amber," he wheezed between chuckles, wiping his face. "You're terrible, but you're not wrong. Mom, just let us handle this, okay? Go sit down somewhere." His words crushed me. This was the boy I had raised alone after his father died, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, and here he was, laughing at my humiliation like it was entertainment. Sarah's face had gone pale, her professional composure fraying. Compassion flickered in her eyes, which only deepened the ache in my chest. Around us, strangers whispered. Some pointed. A few raised their phones, recording every second. "Ma'am," Sarah said quietly, steadying herself. "Perhaps you'd like to wait in our lounge while we resolve the room issue." Amber rolled her eyes and let out an exaggerated sigh. "Yes, take the old woman somewhere she won't embarrass us, and make sure someone keeps her in check. She tends to wander." Mark laughed again, harder this time, as if his wife had delivered the punchline of a comedy routine. I felt my heart splinter, shards digging deeper with each sound of his laughter. But I didn't crumble. Something inside me, something I thought time had worn away, rose up. The same grit that had carried me through sleepless nights and endless work days. The same fire that had built everything these two were now trying to trample. I bent down, picked up my small suitcase and walked toward the elevator. My back stayed straight, my steps steady. Behind me, Amber's shrill voice carried on, berating Sarah about the penthouse. I ignored it. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing me off from the chaos. Sarah's eyes met mine at the last second. A tiny nod, she knew. She remembered exactly who I was. And she was waiting for me to give the word. Up on the 12th floor, the elevator numbers ticked upward, each one igniting something stronger inside me. Hurt still lingered sharp and bitter, but determination began to spread with it. By morning, the sunrise spilled across the ocean, casting the beach in pink and gold. A view people would pay thousands for, and yet I felt hollow, like an empty shell. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, Amber's voice echoed, "She's just the servant." And worse, Mark's laughter twisted in my mind like a knife. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. When I opened it, there stood Mark. No apology on his face, no regret in his eyes, just a casual, dismissive awkwardness. "Mom, we're heading to breakfast," he said flatly. "Amber wants you to watch the kids at the pool after. We've got spa appointments." He said it like nothing had happened, like the night before had been a joke I was too fragile to handle, but he had no idea what I was about to do next. "No, good morning. No. How did you sleep?" Not even the faintest acknowledgement of what had happened the night before, just another order disguised as kindness. "Mark," I said quietly, "about last night." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Mom, don't make a big deal out of it." Amber was stressed about the room. You know how she gets when things don't go her way. That's what he called it. Nothing. As if being screamed at. Called a servant in front of strangers and laughed at by my own son was nothing. "She called me the help, Mark," I whispered. In front of everyone. He shifted, avoiding my eyes. "She didn't mean it. It's just Amber being dramatic. Can we not drag this out? We're supposed to be on vacation." I looked at him, searching for the boy I once knew. The boy who used to slip into my bed during thunderstorms, who once told me I was the strongest person in the world. That boy was gone. Standing in his place was a 47-year-old man who chose his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. "Fine," I said at last. The word tasted bitter. His shoulders relaxed instantly. "Great, we'll be gone all day. Spa, lunch, maybe shopping? You don't mind watching the kids, do you?" Of course I minded. I had dreamed of this trip as a chance to grow closer to my grandchildren, not to serve as their unpaid nanny. But saying no would only spark another scene. I forced a nod. The restaurant was crowded with families laughing over pancakes and clinking glasses. Amber had already claimed the best table by the window and was barking orders before I even sat down. "I want fresh squeezed orange juice." "Not the concentrate," she snapped at the young waiter, Kevin, whose hands trembled slightly as he scribbled notes. "And the eggs, soft-boiled, exactly 3 minutes. Not a second more or less." I caught Kevin's eye for a brief moment. He was trying, but I knew Amber was testing every ounce of his patience. My grandchildren, Lily and Leo, sat at the table with tablets propped in front of them, their faces illuminated by the screens. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said softly. Brushing Lily's hair with my hand, Amber's arm shot out like a barrier. "Don't touch her. She just had her hair done. I don't want it ruined." I pulled back, stung, as if I'd done something wrong. "Kids, say good morning to Grandma Helen," Mark mumbled without looking up from his phone. "Good morning," they chorused flatly, eyes never leaving their screens. I took the last chair, the one with its back to the ocean view. Amber's deliberate arrangement, her family at the front, me tucked away like an afterthought, did not escape me. "Helen," she said without even glancing my way, "after breakfast you'll take the kids to the pool. Sunscreen every hour. If Lily gets the slightest pink, it's on you. Keep them out of the deep end. No snacks, they're full of chemicals. And if they need anything, you call me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." Each command landed like a sting. Another reminder that she didn't see me as a grandmother, but as staff. "How long will you be at the spa?" I asked quietly. Amber finally met my gaze, her eyes cold. "As long as we want. This is our vacation. You're here to help." Mark stayed silent, glued to his phone, refusing to defend me. Later at the pool, families splashed and laughed while Lily and Leo sat glued to their tablets beside me. I tried to spark conversation, but their attention never left their screens. Then, without looking up, Lily spoke. "Grandma?" My heart leapt. "Yes, sweetheart?" "Mom says you used to clean houses for rich people." "Is that true?" Lily asked, her small voice carrying more weight than she realized. The word stung harder than a slap. No, I had never cleaned houses for anyone. I had built an empire with my own hands, created jobs, and earned my place in an industry where few women dared to stand. Yet, in Amber's twisted version of my life, I was nothing more than a maid. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "I'm a business owner. I build hotels." Leo finally looked up from his tablet, his brow furrowed. "Mom says you make up stories about being important because you're embarrassed about being poor." The cruelty in his voice knocked the air from my lungs. Amber hadn't just humiliated me in the lobby. She had poisoned my grandchildren against me, drip-feeding them lies until they saw me as nothing but a pathetic old woman clinging to fantasies. "Your grandmother is not poor," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "And she doesn't make up stories." Lily shrugged, barely glancing my way. "That's what Mom says. She says you live in a tiny apartment and pretend to be rich. In reality, I lived in a penthouse overlooking the bay, worth more than most people could dream of. But in their eyes, I was a nobody. Their mother's words had stolen from me the chance to be seen as anything more. I spent the next 6 hours at that pool, watching them click through games and videos, barely acknowledging me. Around us, other families laughed, splashed, and made memories. I sat on the sidelines of my own family, treated like a stranger. Guests stopped to chat politely now and then, but my heart felt hollow with every passing minute. When Mark and Amber returned, their skin glowed from spa treatments, their laughter easy after a long lunch. Amber's nails gleamed fresh polish, her hair styled to perfection. She looked like someone who had spent the day being worshipped, and she had, in a spa I owned, with services I paid for. "How were the kids?" Mark asked, scrolling through his phone. "Fine," I answered. What else could I say? That my grandchildren thought I was a liar? That their mother was erasing me piece by piece? "Good," Amber replied, barely looking at me. "You'll watch them again tomorrow. We've got golf in the morning and lunch with some friends from the spa." Mark nodded along, never once asking if I minded, never once considering that maybe I wanted a vacation too. That night, I sat alone in my ocean view room. The moonlight spilled across the waves, the same waves that had once soothed me after long days of work. But now the view felt like mockery. I wasn't on a family trip. I was on a work shift, unpaid and unappreciated, trapped in the role Amber had written for me. Yet in that quiet darkness, something shifted. The pain was still raw, but anger bloomed beside it. Anger at being dismissed, at being lied about, at being treated like nothing when I had built everything. By the third morning, the pattern was the same. Amber gave orders while applying her lipstick, each word clipped and precise. "Lunch at noon sharp. Lily gets cranky if her blood sugar drops, so keep the snacks I packed. And don't let them near the deep end, Mark added without looking up. We'll be back by 6. Maybe later if traffic's bad. I nodded, saying nothing, because I had learned my words only bounced off their walls. But as they gathered their things, Amber's voice drifted through the cracked door while she spoke on the phone. No, we can't do dinner tonight, she said sweetly. I'm stuck on babysitting duty again. I know it's ridiculous, but just a few more days. Believe me, once this is settled, we won't have to deal with this anymore. Her laugh followed, light and sharp. A chill rippled through me. Whatever she meant by settled, it wasn't good. And for the first time I realized this wasn't just cruelty or entitlement. Something deeper was at play. After Amber's phone call, her words kept echoing in my head. When this is all settled. It sounded heavier than just talking about the vacation. Once they left for their so-called wine tour, I decided not to sit by the pool like a discarded nanny. I took Lily and Leo to the kids' club, a place I had personally designed years ago to give parents peace of mind while their children thrived. The staff greeted me warmly, and within minutes, my grandchildren were laughing, painting, and running around with other children their age. For the first time that week, I saw them smile without the shadow of Amber's sharp tongue hanging over them. With them happily occupied, I strolled the resort grounds. I wanted to see Serenity Shores the way our guests did. The manicured gardens, the sound of the ocean rolling in, the little details I had poured my heart into. It was all running smoothly. I should have felt proud. Instead, unease tugged at me. That's when I heard it. Familiar voices drifting from behind the linen curtains of a private cabana by the pool bar. I froze. Mark and Amber. They weren't on a wine tour at all. They were lounging, drinks in hand, chatting with another couple I didn't recognize. She's getting old, Amber said with a laugh that didn't sound like humor. Old people don't last forever, if you know what I mean. The other woman chuckled, though it sounded nervous. Amber, you're terrible. I'm realistic, Amber said smoothly. Mark's an only child. Everything's coming to us eventually. The only question is how long we have to wait. A cold weight pressed into my chest. What about the mother? The man asked. And then I heard my son's voice. My son. Mom? Of course not. She's broke. Lives in a shoebox apartment, barely surviving on Social Security. I've been carrying her for years. The lies rolled out of him like they'd been rehearsed. I gripped the rough bark of a palm tree, steadying myself. I wasn't broke. I lived in a penthouse overlooking the bay. My investments alone could fund their lifestyle 10 times over. But in Mark's version of my life, I was a parasite he generously tolerated. That's why this trip's such a pain, Amber cut in. We have to drag her along because she can't afford anything on her own. It's like babysitting a sad little pet. The woman made a sympathetic sound. How awful for you. And don't think I'm going to nurse her when she gets really old, Amber added, her voice sharp as glass. The second she needs real care, she's going into one of those state homes. I'm not turning my house into a hospice. They all laughed. The sound burned through me. Mark leaned back, his tone dripping with disdain. The crazy part? She still thinks she's important. She tells these stories about owning hotels, about building businesses. It's pathetic. I think she's losing it. Dementia? The man asked. Maybe, Mark said casually. Or maybe she just can't accept she never mattered. The laughter returned, crueler this time. Amber's voice cut through it. She actually told the kids yesterday she owns Serenity Shores. Can you imagine? Like a maid suddenly claiming she runs the place. It's sad, really. My knees nearly gave out. Serenity Shores was mine. My dream, my legacy. And here they were, mocking me, erasing everything I had built. Amber sighed dramatically. At least we won't have to put up with her stories much longer. 10 years max, maybe 5. Then we'll finally be free. They clinked glasses, toasting to a future without me in it. The other woman asked. Does she even pay her way? Amber rolled her eyes. Are you kidding? She's useless with money. Mark covers everything. Her groceries, utilities, even this trip. She's a total drain. My throat tightened. For years, I had been the one covering their debts, quietly paying their mortgage when Mark fell behind, writing checks for private school tuition, absorbing Amber's endless shopping bills. I had never once asked for thanks. I thought I was helping them, securing their future. But as I stood hidden in the shade of that palm tree, I finally understood. They didn't see me as a provider. They saw me as disposable. The only good thing about having her around, Mark said, his voice flat and unfeeling, is that she's basically free childcare. She's so desperate for our approval, she'll do whatever we ask. Amber gave a sharp laugh. Exactly. She tries so hard it's almost funny. Expensive toys for the kids, offering to help with every little thing, like she thinks buying us off will make us respect her. Pathetic but useful. I couldn't listen to another word. My chest tightened as I stumbled back from the cabana, careful not to let them see me. My vision blurred, but I refused to cry there. Not in the open. Not where they might catch me breaking. In the sanctuary of my suite in my resort, I finally let the weight crash down. My son, the child I'd raised alone after his father passed, saw me not as a mother, but as a burden. Amber, who had smiled across countless dinners and holidays, looked at me as nothing more than unpaid labor. Even my grandchildren, too young to understand, had already been taught to see me as a fraud. For decades, I had worked myself raw to give them everything. The roof over their heads, the tuition checks, the quiet bailouts no one else knew about, and all the while, they painted me as some penniless old woman clinging to their generosity. The phone rang. I nearly ignored it, but the sound cut through my thoughts. Mrs. Montgomery? It was Sarah from the front desk, her tone warm, careful. I hope I'm not intruding, but some of the staff mentioned they were worried. I just wanted to check. Are you all right? Her simple kindness pierced deeper than anything Amber or Mark had offered me in years. My throat tightened. I'm fine, Sarah. Thank you for asking. Are you sure? She pressed gently. If there's anything we can do to make your stay more comfortable. The irony almost made me laugh. One of my own employees, paid to serve guests, was showing me more humanity than my family ever did. Actually, I said, the words steadying me, there is something. I'd like a complete breakdown of every charge on my son's account. Meals, spa treatments, excursions, everything. And I'd like it tonight. There was a pause. Of course, Mrs. Montgomery. May I ask what this is in reference to? Let's just say, I murmured, my gaze drifting toward the ocean blazing orange in the sunset. I've been seeing things more clearly lately. After I hung up, I stood by the window watching the waves crash against the shore. For the first time in days, the anger inside me no longer felt like a wound. It felt like fuel. They thought I was weak. They thought I was finished. They were about to learn otherwise. That evening, Mark and Amber returned, glowing from their so-called wine tour, strutting into the lobby as if they owned the place. Mom, Mark said, spotting me with Lily and Leo at my side. His voice carried that smooth, practiced concern. Hope the kids weren't too much trouble. Not at all, I replied, calm, steady. They had a wonderful day at the kids' club. The children lit up briefly, then ran back to their parents as though I'd vanished into thin air. Perfect, Amber said, barely glancing at me while checking her reflection on her phone. We're heading downtown for seafood tonight. You don't mind staying in, do you? The kids need an early bedtime anyway. It wasn't a question. It never was. Of course, I said lightly, though bitterness coiled in my mouth. While they preened and planned another night out at my expense, I excused myself to my room. My hand didn't shake as I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in months. When the line clicked, a familiar voice answered. David Stone, he said. My attorney, my fiercest ally. David, I said, steel sharpening my voice for the first time in years. It's Helen Montgomery. I need your help. Helen, what a pleasant surprise. How's retirement treating you? I almost laughed at the word. Retirement. I had stepped away from daily operations, yes, but I was far from retired. My mind was as sharp as it had ever been, and my empire still bore my fingerprints on every corner. David, I said evenly, I need some information. Hypothetically, if someone were misusing credit cards tied to my accounts, what legal action could I take? There was a pause, the kind where you could hear the wheels turning. That sounds awfully specific for a hypothetical. Are you in some kind of trouble? Let's just say I'm considering restructuring. And what if the misuse comes from family members, authorized users, who are lying about the source of the money? His tone hardened. Helen, if someone is committing fraud under your name, even if it's family, it's a felony. I need you to be very clear. Are you saying that's what's happening? I stared at the dark waves outside my window, the moonlight scattering silver across the water. I'm saying I'm done being taken advantage of, and I want to know my options. For the next 30 minutes, David laid it out. The laws, the protections, the consequences. It was sobering, yes, but liberating too. I had more leverage than I realized. Mark and Amber had walked themselves into a trap, one I hadn't even needed to set. When I hung up, I called the front desk. Mrs. Montgomery, this is Sarah. How can I help you? Sarah, I said, steady and calm. I need you to prepare a full record of my son's family's stay. Every charge, every special request, every staff interaction. I want it all. There was a beat of hesitation. May I ask the reason? Let's call it a quality review, I said. I want to ensure procedures are being followed. Yes, ma'am. I'll have it ready for you first thing. By morning, the sky was heavy with gray, mirroring the restless storm inside me. I hadn't slept much, but for the first time in days I felt focused. At 7 sharp, Sarah met me in the lobby with a file in her hand. It's all here, Mrs. Montgomery, but I should warn you the behavior documented is extensive. I flipped through the pages, 17 complaints since arrival. Amber had demanded room changes, sent back meals, berated staff over trivial details, and even asked the pool to be cleared so her children could swim alone. And my son? I asked, though I already knew. Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. He hasn't been the instigator, but he has supported her in every demand. Of course. Mark had perfected the art of enabling, letting Amber do the shouting while he stood silently behind her, nodding as if that absolved him. Sarah hesitated, then leaned closer. There's something else. Yesterday, Mrs. Montgomery made comments to another guest about the hotel's management. She said the place was clearly run by some detached old family who didn't care anymore. She bragged she could run it better herself. The irony almost made me laugh. The resort she mocked was mine. Every polished corner, every stone path, every smile from staff bore my stamp. Thank you, Sarah, I said. This is very helpful. On my way back to the elevators, I passed Kevin, the young waiter from breakfast. He hesitated, then stepped forward. Mrs. Montgomery? He said softly. I turned. Yes? His voice was cautious, respectful. I just wanted you to know. The staff has noticed how your family treats you, and none of us think it's right. I froze. What do you mean? He glanced around before continuing. We know who you are. You've always treated us with kindness, but to see the way they speak to you, the way they act as if you don't matter, it doesn't sit right with any of us. His quiet loyalty sliced deeper than Amber's cruelty ever could. My throat tightened. Thank you, Kevin. That means more than you realize. I leaned closer. Actually, there is something you can do. Keep giving them flawless service, but I want everything documented. Every word, every action. Can you handle that? His eyes sharpened with determination. Yes, ma'am. Consider it done. For the next 2 days, I stopped playing the role they had written for me, no longer the silent, grateful grandmother. I was watching, listening, recording. Every complaint, every careless word, every lie they spun in public, I collected it all. They thought I was their servant. They were about to learn I was their judge. I was no longer sitting quietly on the sidelines while Amber barked orders and Mark pretended not to notice. The part of me that had built a business from the ground up, the one who could see through a smile and measure the strength of a handshake, was wide awake again. What I saw when I truly looked at them chilled me. Amber wasn't just demanding. She was cruel. I watched her reduce a young housekeeper to tears over the way towels were folded. Later, she berated a poolside server so viciously that the boy's hands shook as he set down her drink. Mark didn't stop her. He laughed, joined in, and treated the people who worked for me like disposable background scenery in his little show of superiority. But it was what they did to their own children that finally broke through my restraint. One afternoon, Lily scraped her knee climbing out of the pool. It was nothing more than a shallow cut, but she cried out for comfort. I rushed to her, ready to soothe her, but Amber got there first, only to unleash her fury on the lifeguard. Then she spun toward me. "This is your fault," she snapped. If you'd been watching instead of daydreaming, she wouldn't be hurt. The lifeguard stood frozen under Amber's tirade. Lily was still sniffling, so I cleaned the scrape and placed a bandage over it while she leaned into me, trusting me with her pain. "Grandma," she whispered through her tears, "why doesn't Mommy like you?" The question cut deeper than anything Amber had ever said. Even at 8, Lily could see what I had tried to hide, that her mother's contempt for me was a daily performance. Before I could answer, Amber's voice cracked across the air like a whip. "Lily, get away from her right now. I told you not to cling to your grandmother. She won't be around much longer anyway." That was it. The cruelty in those words wasn't just for me. It was poison spilled on her own child. That night, I made my calls. David, my attorney, got the first. I gave him details this time, not hypotheticals. Then my accountant, who would prepare the records I needed. Finally, John Peterson, my most trusted general manager, who understood how to carry out delicate instructions with precision. By the time I hung up, I saw a different woman in the mirror. Still 72, still carrying lines from years of work, but with fire in her eyes. I wasn't powerless anymore. The next morning, Serenity Shores gleamed under a perfect blue sky. To most, it would have been the picture of tranquility. To me, it felt like the stage for the confrontation I had been planning all night. Amber woke brimming with excitement. She had arranged one final grand dinner in the resort's most exclusive ocean view room, the kind of extravagance that cost more than most families spend in a month. She beamed at me over breakfast. "Tonight will be perfect," she said smugly. "The Hendersons, the Martins, and that sweet couple from Boston are all joining us. It's going to be a night to remember." Mark nodded proudly. "Mom, could you watch the kids during dinner? They get bored when it's just adults." There it was again. My place reduced to babysitter, while strangers feasted at my expense. I smiled faintly and agreed, but inside I felt something cold and steady settle in. They thought they were walking into a celebration. What they didn't know was that it was their final performance, and I was the one holding the script. The morning was consumed with preparations. David had worked through the night, tightening every legal thread until nothing could unravel. John Peterson had quietly briefed the staff who needed to know the truth, and I rehearsed my words in the mirror until my voice carried no hesitation. At 3 o'clock, the call came. "Mrs. Montgomery, this is Detective Miller. We've reviewed the records your attorney provided. With the unauthorized charges and false representations, we're ready to move forward whenever you say the word." "Thank you, Detective. I'll be in touch tonight." The hours crawled by. Amber spent the afternoon draping herself in designer silk, applying makeup with the precision of someone preparing for battle. Mark polished his shoes and rehearsed his charm. ready to present himself as the successful man Amber wanted the world to believe he was. Neither of them asked me how I was preparing, or if I even planned to join. In their minds, I was there to serve, not to shine. By 7, we gathered in the Horizon Room, the crown jewel of Serenity Shores Resort. Wall-to-wall windows framed the ocean's endless horizon. Chandeliers spilled soft light across the polished marble floors, and every detail spoke of elegance and success. I had chosen it all, built it all. But tonight it would be used for something far different than celebration. Amber's guests were already seated. 6 well-dressed couples who seemed utterly taken with her polished charm and Mark's easy confidence. When she introduced me, it was with the flat tone of someone presenting a forgotten accessory. "This is Mark's mother," Amber said, dismissive. "She's been helping with the kids this week." Lily and Leo sat beside me, and I busied myself cutting their food, keeping them entertained while the others dined on course after course. Every time the children acted like normal kids, laughing too loudly, asking innocent questions, Amber's eyes cut toward me, sharp with blame. Midway through dinner, Amber struck. "Helen," she said loudly, her voice bright but edged with disdain, "why don't you take the children out to the balcony? They're distracting from the conversation." It was the opening I had been waiting for. With every guest watching, she had made her move to belittle me. Slowly, I set my napkin on the table, stood, and walked toward the head of the table where Amber sat draped in borrowed elegance. "Actually, Amber," I said, my voice calm but carrying, "I think it's time we spoke honestly." The room fell silent. Amber looked up at me, irritation flashing in her eyes. "I asked you to take the children outside," she said sharply. "I heard you," I replied evenly. "Just like I heard your conversation by the cabana 3 days ago, when you said you couldn't wait for me to die so you could finally have control. When you called me a useless old woman. When you promised Mark I'd be locked away the moment I became inconvenient." Amber's painted smile faltered, the color draining from her cheeks. "That's absurd," she stammered. "You must have misheard." Did I mishear when my son laughed and called me delusional? When he agreed I was nothing more than baggage? Or shall I remind you of the credit card charges? Tens of thousands, all unauthorized. Mark's fork clattered onto his plate. His face shifted from feigned confusion to raw panic as the weight of my words sank in. Around the table, their friends shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between the 3 of us. The polished illusion Amber and Mark had built was starting to fracture, and for the first time all week, I wasn't the one shrinking under the weight of their arrogance. Mark's voice cut through the silence, tight with warning. "Mom, maybe we should step aside and talk about this in private." I didn't take my eyes off Amber. "No, Mark. We've had enough whispered conversations behind closed doors. This time the truth comes out where everyone can hear it." From my handbag, I drew out a thick folder, the sound of papers shifting sharp in the stillness. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady, "allow me to properly introduce myself. My name is Helen Montgomery. I am the founder and owner of the Montgomery Hospitality Group." Gasps rippled through the room. One of the women at the table covered her mouth. "This resort you're dining in, Serenity Shores, is one of 17 properties under my name. The food before you, the rooms you're sleeping in, the staff who've served you, it all belongs to me." Amber's painted smile collapsed. Mark sat frozen, pale as the linen tablecloth. "For the past week," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "my own son and his wife have treated me as a burden. They've mocked me, belittled me, and told anyone who would listen that I was a penniless old woman, inventing stories of success to feel important." I opened the folder and drew out the documents one by one. "This is the deed to Serenity Shores. Here's my corporate registration. These are audited financials showing my net worth, $45 million. I lifted the last packet. And this is a record of every single charge Mark and Amber have racked up on my cards, under the illusion I gave them out of kindness. $156,000 in 6 months. Spa retreats, shopping sprees, lavish dinners, vacations across the country, all paid for by me, while they told others I was living on their charity. The room was hushed. Even Lily and Leo sat silently, their wide eyes taking it all in. Amber finally managed a whisper. "Helen, please let me explain." "Explain what?" My voice was sharp now. "Explain how you called me the help in front of my staff. How you've spent years turning my grandchildren against me. How you planned to dump me in a state facility the moment I became inconvenient." Mark spoke at last, his voice trembling. "Mom, we can fix this. This isn't what it looks like. It's just—" I turned to him. The son I had raised alone. The boy who had once clung to my hand at night. "No, Mark, this is exactly what you wanted. A mother who gave without expecting respect. A woman you could strip of dignity while still taking her money. You counted on me being too weak, too lonely to push back." I picked up my phone, pressed a single button, and lifted it to my ear. "Detective Miller, this is Helen Montgomery. Yes." "I'm ready for you now." The reaction was immediate. Amber shot to her feet so fast her wine glass toppled, spilling red across the tablecloth like a wound. "You called the police?" she shrieked. "On your own family?" "I called the police on criminals," I corrected coldly. "The fact that we share blood doesn't erase fraud." Mark stood, his hands trembling. "Mom, please, think about the kids. Don't let them see this. They don't deserve to watch their parents dragged away in handcuffs." "You should have thought about them long ago," I answered. "Before you taught them their grandmother was worthless. Before you decided money was worth more than their memories with me." The other guests began gathering their things, eager to escape the storm unraveling before them. I didn't blame them. This wasn't their fight. Amber leaned toward me, her face twisted with fear and fury. "You're making a terrible mistake," she hissed. "We're your family. We're all you've got. Do this, and you'll be alone forever." I looked at her, the woman who had tried to erase me, who had poisoned my bond with my son and grandchildren for 5 relentless years. And in that moment, I didn't feel fear, or loneliness, or even anger. I felt something else entirely. Freedom. "Pure peace," I whispered, my voice steady as I faced Amber. "You think I'm afraid of being alone. The truth is I've been alone for years. The only difference now is that it's finally on my terms." Footsteps echoed down the hallway, sharp and deliberate. When Detective Miller entered with his partner, the air in the horizon room shifted. Mark and Amber shrank instantly, their bravado stripped away, replaced by the look of people who suddenly understood they were out of options. "Mrs. Montgomery?" Miller asked gently. "Are these the individuals you wish to press charges against?" I turned my gaze to Mark, searching for some flicker of the boy I had once raised. The boy who used to fall asleep on my chest after long days of work. Instead, I saw nothing but hardened resentment. His mask was gone. "You vindictive old witch," he spat, his voice trembling with rage. "You're destroying this family over money." And in that moment, my resolve hardened. I knew I was doing the right thing. The legal process unfolded faster than I expected. David, my attorney, had anticipated every move. The evidence of fraud, unauthorized charges, and financial abuse was airtight. Their lawyer, paid with my money no less, advised them to take a plea rather than face the humiliation of a trial. The charges carried weight, but the true devastation came from the truth being made public. Within days, the local business section carried a headline that spread like wildfire. "Hotelier exposes family fraud at Serenity Shores Resort." The article detailed my career, my success, and how my own son and his wife had siphoned away thousands while treating me as a burden. It was all true, and it struck harder than any lie they had ever told, I didn't give interviews. I didn't need to. The story told itself. Mark and Amber's downfall was swift. Their names were blacklisted from every Montgomery property. Credit cards canceled, access to accounts revoked. The mortgage I had been paying was cut off, forcing them to sell their home. Within weeks, they were living in a cramped apartment, far removed from the life they once flaunted. But the financial blow was only part of it. Their social world collapsed. The country club membership was gone. The private school that had once welcomed Lily and Leo demanded payment of overdue tuition. Without Grandma Helen's money, the doors closed. The so-called friends who had flocked to their dinners and vacations suddenly had better things to do. From my penthouse overlooking the city, I watched it all unfold. Not with joy, but with relief. For the first time in decades, I wasn't being drained. I was free. 3 months later, a letter arrived. The handwriting was Amber's, though it wobbled now, stripped of its usual confidence. The return address was their new apartment. "Dear Helen," it began. "We hope you can forgive us for our mistakes. We've learned our lesson and want to make amends. The children miss their grandmother, and Mark realizes how wrong he was. Please give us another chance to be the family you deserve." I read it twice, then folded it carefully and filed it alongside the police reports. It wasn't an apology. It was another plea for access, another attempt to climb back into my life for what they could take. Mark had revealed his true self the night he cursed me in front of strangers. Amber's letter only confirmed they hadn't changed. They had merely been humbled by consequence. I never replied. Instead, I built the life I should have had long ago. I sold 2 of my smaller hotels and used the funds to launch the Montgomery Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting seniors from financial exploitation and neglect. Its headquarters took the top floor of my newest property in Miami, overlooking the city with pride. There, I found a new kind of family. Dr. Linda Vargas, a brilliant gerontologist with a fierce heart, became the daughter I never had. Sergio Ortiz, our advocacy lawyer, reminded me of what Mark could have been if he'd chosen integrity. Sofia Ramos, who ran our survivor groups, carried her own scars from betrayal and turned them into light for others. Together we built something lasting, not out of blood, but out of choice. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't pouring my love into a void. I was giving it where it mattered.